I believe that through the cross, that we are as close to God as we want to be. And I think one of the best things we can do is just be honest with where our desire level is. God, I'm not wanting you like I want to want you. Would you help me want you? Because even the desire to want, like even wanting is a grace.
Yeah.
Pick a time, pick a place, and have a plan. How do I attune my heart to heaven? How do I attune my heart to Father, Son, Holy Spirit? And whatever storm you're going through, somebody's listening to this, going through a storm, you need to know that Jesus is praying for you. In that storm, he speaks to you and he still says the same thing. Take courage. He literally puts courage in your heart. He tells us who he is, reminds us who he is. And then he says, don't be afraid.
What's going on, everybody? Welcome to another episode of the Matthew West Podcast. I'm your host, Matthew West, and as always, I really hope you like it. Thank you for joining me. Welcome to the Storyhouse. Very excited about today's conversation, so we're going to jump right in. But first, I got to tell you, we're heading on the road this fall. I hope you're coming to see me on the Don't Stop Praying tour. It's going to be awesome. Lots of exciting things going on. Christmas album coming out, Christmas tour. My goodness, there's just too many things. So just follow me on socials so that you can stay up to speed on everything. And thanks for listening to the podcast. Make sure wherever you're listening or watching, make sure that you're hitting the follow or subscribe button so that you don't miss an episode. Speaking of not missing an episode, you have tuned in to the right one because this is going to be an awesome conversation. I'm joined by my pastor here in Nashville today. He is incredible, and I believe he's going to speak a word that's going to inspire us all today. So let's go to the Storyhouse with Pastor Kevin Queen. All right, the first time we hung out together there was sushi and food.
Yeah.
So I apologize for not delivering on I think I offered you a peanut butter cup, but you're staying fit.
I'm sucking in. That's what it is.
But thanks for being here on the podcast.
Grateful for it.
It's great to have you.
It's a good time. Yeah. And we'll have to do the sushi.
Yeah.
We'll have to
we'll do it again for sure. My family and I first came into contact with you, Pastor Kevin, and your church, Crosspoint. I think I might have told you this, but during the pandemic, when we were for a season unable to attend church in person, we were just looking online and wound up just having incredible church in our home as a result of your church, Crosspoint, here in Nashville. Your online services were just phenomenal. And it just really ministered to our family. I can literally, as I'm telling you this, I picture my wife and our girls sitting in the living room on a Sunday morning during a really difficult time for our whole world and just having powerful worship experiences thanks to the vision that you and your church had to go, okay, we're going to meet people where they need to be met right now. Did the online services that you were doing, were you already doing that quite a bit before the pandemic hit?
Yeah. First off, just want to say thank you for having me on the podcast.
Oh man, I'm honored.
I mean, I when I think back at that time, and there's just a great team that came together. But really, it takes us back to prayer. There was a prayer of God, what's your vision? What do you have next for us as a church? And back in 2019, there was a generosity initiative, and one of those was digital. One of the parts of that was digital discipleship. And so we just sensed God leading us to create this digital discipleship platform so that we can reach more people online with the gospel. So that was in 2019, not knowing that in 2020 the world was shut down. So a lot of the infrastructure and a lot of the hires and the team that was in place was tied to what he did before that. And really, I think that was one of the beautiful things about prayer is because then when it happened, only God can get the glory. You know? So when he gives something in prayer, I think the way that he orchestrates it, he gets the glory, and really for the team being in place. And one of the interesting things was, our broadcast location was hit by a tornado on March 3rd, 2020.
That's right.
Right before the middle of March when the world shut down.
That's right.
And so even something that was just terrible, that a tornado hit our building, God used in such a way where it caused us to broadcast our service, to film our services outside a building. So where a lot of people were just kind of broadcasting from the building they were in. We didn't have a building.
Right.
So we were having to go all over and actually get creative. I think.
Oh, you were in a field one day. I mean, you were all over the place.
One day in a vineyard. I mean, we were just kind of going through the scriptures and actually, and it was so much. I mean, I loved it because it gave me an excuse to get out of the house. So there was this beautiful thing that God did from really a lot of the constraints that were put on us us through a really difficult, and we were all going through a difficult time, but we were able to see God move.
Yeah.
People getting baptized in swimming pools and hot tubs, and, wherever we were watching God move outside of this box that so many of us had put him in, and to see him move, hear the stories of families in living rooms, experiencing
like
the
the
presence
West
of God.
family.
Yes.
And I know it's far reaching beyond Nashville, but just know that there were so many in-town families that were so ministered to by the vision that you guys had. And it's just so cool to hear that that's a result of prayer and action in 2019. That's a really cool thing. So this studio here is called the Storyhouse, and I call it that because several years ago I started collecting people's testimonies and stories, and the idea was you tell me what to write about, and I would get thousands. I still get them, thousands of stories. In fact, there's a scrapbook over there. People share their stories with me, and a lot of times that will actually inform and inspire the songs that I write. So we call this the Storyhouse. But now that we do the podcast from here as well, it's I always look at this podcast as a way of people sharing the story that God's writing with their life. And you're such a gifted storyteller and speaker. And when you share the gospel, you just do it in such a authentic and honest and unique way that tells the greater story to all of us every Sunday morning. But I was excited to have you in just to hear a little bit more about your story. And also we're going to talk about the topic of prayer, but you are from Georgia. Yeah. I just want to do a quick, from an origin story of Pastor Kevin Queen. So you grew up in Georgia, and from day one, you wanted to be a preacher. Is that right?
No.
Okay. So I was way off. My Wikipedia failed me.
Wikipedia was wrong. Yeah, my mom might have updated that, so I don't know. But I grew up in a home where my mom and dad were they were radically saved. They came to Christ. They were both way into the party scene, and it was about a year after I was born. They both came to Christ, just radically saved, and there was a revival that was going on in the church that they were in at the time, just a move of God. I mean, there was a little 400-seat, church, and they were reaching 1,500 people, on a week, just packed out, and the church was just growing. 1,000 people came to Christ. I mean, so it was pretty incredible. The stories, well, they decided early on, we'll never go to a dead church. Wherever we go is going to be a church that's going to be alive. And so fortunately I had the opportunity to grow up in some churches. We're really seeing God move. Ended up going in high school, kind of had the prodigal route, and through getting arrested at a Walmart, kind of created it's another podcast. It's another story for the Storyhouse.
I kind of like this one going.
But getting arrested really caused me to see. I remember being in the back of a police car, and I was a klepto at the time. There were a lot of things that I'd stolen, and the sense of I can either go all in for Jesus or ride in a lot of police cars. So it was this moment where I was going, I'm going all. I've made a mess of this life. I'm going all in. Him just really started to follow Jesus at that point, and at that point my conscience was reawakened, or the Spirit of God, really the Spirit of God. But I would just say at a fundamental level, my conscience, a sensitivity to what's right and wrong, which had been seared. And that's a scary place to be. To not know, am I telling the truth or am I telling the lie? I was really pathologically in a place where I didn't even know if I was telling the truth. So to go from that place of saying categorically, I was a liar. I told a lot of lies and did a lot of cover it, to a moment of just transformation. So I can say God has done a work in my life. I can look back and go, I'm not who I used to be, at 16. I'm continuing to become who God's made me to be. But that was definitely a turning point. Graduated from high school, went to college, ended up at the University of Georgia. I was at a Christian college. There was this 180-foot waterfall. I won't say the name of the college, Toccoa Falls College.
But you could I was going to say,
you
could Google that.
And the staff was doing a devotional at the bottom, and we found a scarecrow. It was Halloween time. We found a scarecrow because it wasn't a Halloween scarecrow at a Christian college, but we found
harvest.
A harvest figure. Right? So we drove. We took it up to the top of the waterfall, and we threw it off and screamed. And so the staff thought, and so
the staff thought somebody had plunged to their death.
Yeah, so that was
well. That explains why you've had David Nasser speak at your church so many times. Because have you heard his stories of high school? He was on the podcast too, and he was telling me.
He told stories too?
Oh gosh,
okay. So I'm in Nasser territory now.
Yeah, absolutely. But I got to say, like it's funny. I was watching on the news, and this is not funny, but in Chicago, two dudes this morning. They stole from a Rolex store, but the fact that you were stealing from a Walmart tells me, okay, this is a Georgia boy right here. Like you
can't take the Georgia out of the board.
You weren't looking for the fine merchandise.
And so at that point, I kind of made it my choice. And so I put a verse. My wife Ree, she was at the University of Georgia, and we were dating at the time. And I put a verse up on my door. It was from Paul. I think it's in Thessalonians. He said, "And when I could stand it no more, I left for Athens." Mm-hmm. And so I was like, I put that up. I'm like, and I'm leaving for Athens. I'm going where Ree is. And so it all worked out better.
That's awesome.
There was revival going on at the University of Georgia back in the late 90s through a ministry called the Wesley Foundation, a pastor, Tom Tanner. And I just got captured by the love of God.
Wow.
And captivated by revival, historical revival, these moves of God. And we were seeing students pray 24/7 before that was really a thing that we knew of at that time. And just experienced this phenomenal move of God. And I decided this is the kind of thing that I want to be a part of. But my dad invited me to come work for the family business. Did that for about 6 months and just knew I have to go be a pastor. Told my dad, and he blessed me. And so then I started going to seminary. Went to seminary, ended up after I graduated, got a job at the church I grew up at, Hebron Baptist Church in Decula. Worked there for a couple years, and then came on staff at 12 Stone Church in Atlanta. We were there for 14 years. And so I've got my wife, Ree. We have 4 kids, Raleigh, Camden, Durham, and Bolton. All have names of cities in North Carolina.
Nice.
And we're not from North Carolina. We're just weird people from Georgia. And so we've got 3 in college right now and one in high school.
Incredible.
And Ree was, I met her when we were in 8th grade at the movie theater. And I knew she was the one that I wanted to date and be with, but she was slower. She wasn't. I had overalls on with the strap hanging down, and
so she couldn't see the potential quite yet.
Yeah, I was like,
overalls that you stole from Walmart.
I don't
apparently,
know. Yeah, maybe.
So she didn't. When did she see the vision?
In college. I think. I think she realized I wasn't so bad.
So even while you were a student at Georgia, you knew the potential of stepping into business with your dad was there, but you were feeling a call into a ministry position even while you were a college student.
Yeah, I think Ree didn't know that she was marrying a pastor, but she had a hunch. And I think I would say the same thing. I didn't know that I was going to be a pastor, but I really had a strong gravitational pull to vocational ministry.
Were you studying business or
advertising?
Advertising?
So it was advertising. And then from there, really got to see God move in just extraordinary ways at 12 Stone Church. Yeah. And then God called us up.
So how many years have you been pastor at Cross Point now?
It's 8 years. So we're going into the 9th year. Yeah.
And I've heard you shared with me a little bit of your story, and prayer is a huge part of what led you from Georgia, because that was a big move too, to come to Nashville.
It's a huge move. Yeah.
But you've seen God's hand in it in a big way.
Man, I think it's hard not to see God's hand in just every turn. It was the most difficult thing that we did, because we left all of our family in an 8-mile radius, moved 4 hours away to a place where we didn't know anybody. I'd never even attended the church before the Sunday that we were announced, so there was never an interview with the church. It was God. We knew God was telling us to go, regardless what was on the other side. And we've been able to see just a miracle story of redemption and a healing story of God working in a church that was already a beautiful church, but that had been through some really difficult things. Yeah. And I'm here for all the redemption stories.
Come on. Guys, I got to tell you about an amazing new movie that's coming out called Soul on Fire. It's coming out October 10th in theaters nationwide. This is a true story inspired by a best-selling memoir of John O'Leary, who overcame a near-fatal childhood fire. And it's a powerful story of overcoming obstacles and finding hope, even in the difficult things that we face. It's got an all-star cast, including William H. Macy, John Corbett, Joel Courtney, Devon Franklin, Macy McLean, and Stephanie Stozak. This movie shows how courage, love, and community can turn tragedy into a life of impact. And I just got to tell you, man, these faith-based films that are coming out are just getting better and better. And we need to go support these films in theaters so that there will be more and more to come. And what an awesome way to share your faith with somebody else who maybe doesn't know the Lord or wouldn't darken the door of the church. Get them a ticket. Take them to that movie. Go to soulonfiremovie.com. That's soulonfiremovie.com to find a theater near you. Soul on Fire in theaters October 10th. So how many total years of being a pastor so far?
22, 23.
So tell me, like, what was one of, in 23, 22 years has been the biggest, I didn't know ministry involed this, or like, have there been surprises, good or bad?
Yeah. Well, I mean, there are a lot of student ministry stuff. I did student ministry for a decade. And then I was a campus pastor for a decade.
Okay.
And then a lead pastor, for 8 years.
Has been being a lead pastor a whole different set of responsibilities or challenges that you didn't know were there?
The challenges have been greater. The loneliness is different.
What do you mean by that?
I think when you're a pastor on a team with other pastors, you have peers, that you can talk to. But there's a loneliness to that lead pastor, and I think some of it's spiritual warfare that goes on. And I think there are some times where you can think, well, truly, when I moved here, I didn't have any.
It was a new community.
Have any friends, and so there was God. He, in His kindness, He gave me a best friend, Dave Clayton, who's a lead pastor in Nashville at Ethos Church, really a church a mile and a half away.
And you guys became fast friends.
We talk on the phone like middle school girls. I mean, it's like every day, like we talk, and so God quickly brought that friendship together, and we became best friends. Which I think, when you look at it from maybe a typical thing, wouldn't be that a pastor might be best friends with another pastor a mile down the road.
Right.
And we would have people all the time go from one church to the other, and we would, we're like, hey, and really, honestly, it helped. I mean, from a kingdom perspective, really, my heart is kingdom first. And so from a kingdom perspective, I think it also helped facilitate unity and relationships. There was an interesting thing when Jesus called, disciples. He called two sets of brothers. And I think the reason that He did that is He invited other people into the community and relationship that's already there. And so a lot of times what God will do is he'll bring together a kingdom partnership, two people, and then other people get invited into that.
That's good.
So they get to model, hey, here's what we're going after. Here's the brotherhood here. And other people get invited in. And so I think that's part of what God did with that relationship.
I've noticed, like, the heartbeat of your church is like readily embracing other local churches, not like it's not a turf war.
I think I've been in places where that happens,
and I've seen that. I've just been in ministry for so long. You could see where, like, churches are, it's like, whoa, what's the main point here? Let's keep the main thing. Thing.
I don't like what it does in me. I don't like what there's this sense of like, I don't want to do anything that grieves the Spirit. And I really think the competitive. I mean, when nothing makes me happier as a dad, like when my kids are loving one another well, when they're working together, when they're getting along.
Right. So the same should be true,
right? Yeah. When there's arguing going on, and where that's not the moment where I go, hey, let's grab ice cream, But when I watch my kids love one another, that's when I want to. That's when I want to bless them. And so when I just don't want to grieve the Spirit. And I think we have to continually be aware of what's going on in our hearts, because it's so easy to go down the trail of jealousy or envy, or to hold on to offense, and it's not. I think those are the things that cause us to miss out on the greater thing that God wants to do, you know. And so my relationship with Dave was key, I think, to establishing some roots in the city and getting great, you know, building a great team of mentors and coaches, counselors, other pastors to lean on.
But that struggle is very real, like on the lonely side for a lot of Christian leaders and like in the Christian music space. I think that's a big, you know, that's something that I'm nodding my head going like, I relate to that as well in a big way. And you have to fight against it. My dad used to always say like, it's like, where does the pastor go to be pastored? You know what I mean? Where does the counselor go to be counseled? But like, you know, the enemy would love to create isolation and loneliness. And then like, well, I have nobody to talk to about, you know, nobody understands quite what I'm going through. So the fact that you've like pushed against that and then seen the Lord provide.
Oh, he has provided.
Yeah.
You know, I think about one. There's a pastor, Dave Stone. If you know Dave Stone. He's
from Louisville.
Louisville.
Yeah, he's hilarious.
So Pastor Dave, I didn't have any. I lost my mentors. I lost the people who were back in Georgia, just because maybe some people at the time weren't thinking, well, we want you to go. You know, and so maybe some relationships were fractured. And I realized I can't defend, like, it's not my job to defend, and not everybody's going to see that. I mean, I've heard it said, like, your call is not a conference call. You know, it doesn't mean that everybody, but you're called to it. Yeah. And so sometimes it's going to disappoint other people. Yeah. But I've watched God do a beautiful thing over time and restore those relationships and heal some of that disappointment. But it really required Rhea and I to draw closer together in our marriage, closer together with the kids, and for me to begin to look out for other pastors. And I was like, who can I learn from? And I reached out to Pastor Dave, and I said, you know, he didn't know me, but I asked him. I said, hey, I'm pastor in a new church. Would you be willing to meet up? And he said, yeah. And he said, I'll meet you in Bowling Green. It's halfway. And so I'm driving up to Bowling Green. And I realized this is not halfway from Louisville. Like, this is over. He drove. Like, I was
gonna say that's only an hour for you.
Yeah, it's an hour for me, and he drove further. And I thought, what a picture. You know, once we get over 40, once we get over 50, like once we're in that season of life, it's now our turn. It's our time to go back and to look like, who do we need to drive? You know, and I'm preaching to myself right now, right?
Me too.
Like,
that's
who do
so
I need
good.
who do I need to make the longer drive for, so that to go that second mile, so that they can go that first mile.
I met Dave. We did Max Licato and I did a cruise together. Where people came with us to Alaska, and Dave came as he was good friends with Max, and I hadn't met Dave before, and he came and spoke as well. And he showed so much kindness to my girls, which were little at the time, and we became fast friends. But I love that reminder of like, who are we championing? And it's funny because I think I'll randomly get a text from Max saying like, hey, I'm just thinking about you today and praying for you, and I'm like, that's him going, like, he's doing the 2-hour drive to my one. And he's like, there's something about me that has a heart for, and just goes out of his way to reach out to me with something as simple as a text, but it means the world to me. Hey, did you know that I'm going to be on tour coming up very soon? The Don't Stop Praying tour is on sale now. Hitting the road this fall, a select amount of cities, MatthewWest.com, all your city and ticket information. We've got some special VIP tickets as well where we can hang out in person. Don't miss your chance to join me on the Don't Stop Praying tour this fall. Go to MatthewWest.com to get your tickets today.
So when was the point where you were like, I'm not a Timothy anymore? You know, like, I'm a Paul now. Like, I'm in that season of now it's time to invest in, not that you weren't investing in others, but I think there comes a moment maybe where we look back and we go, it's my time to invest in others.
For me, it was one of my best friends. She was the first person that opened the door for me to a career in the music industry. Her name was Cindy, and she was a music publisher. And she had spent her whole life championing other people. She was the one behind the scenes. And I mean, it wasn't about her own name or recognition. She was getting knuckleheads like me, getting our songs in front of Rascal Flatts or whatever. And you got to hear about Matthew West. You got to hear. And she championed. She helped get my first songs recorded and just believed in me and went up and down Music Road telling people about me. And that was her whole life, was championing other people. And she had a fierce battle with cancer and passed away at 50. And I remember being at her funeral, and I just had the word champion just kept rolling around in my brain. Like, that's what she was. And I wrote some notes down and wound up speaking at her memorial service about how she spent her whole life championing others. The whole time I was speaking, I kept thinking, Matthew, when's the last time you championed anybody other than your own cause? Because it can be when you've got ambition in the music industry, it's like you're just pushing your own rock to the top of the hill. And I got so convicted in the best way. It's like you talked about the conviction or conscience or the voice of the Holy Spirit can get quieter the further we remove ourselves from being willing to hear it.
Yes.
But that was a moment where I heard it loud and clear. And I'll never forget the pallbearers for her funeral, for her casket, were all women. And they were all women who were formerly incarcerated at the Tennessee prison, because nobody knew it. I knew it. But every Sunday, without fail, that lady who championed me also went inside the walls of that prison every Sunday night and led a Bible study for these women and championed them. And they were now out and had rehabilitated their lives and went to pay their respects. And the ones that she championed were carrying her casket. And I'll tell you, and that's like, that had nothing to do with me championing other people in music.
Yeah.
But now it's become that. And now like we help develop and pour into, I get to speak into young songwriters and stuff like that. But like what you're talking about is the Paul and Timothy relationship from a spiritual standpoint. Like it spoke to me in a big way too, of going like, what am I doing beyond just singing to people?
Yes.
Like, what does it look like? And I remember just feeling like I was seeing things so much clearer when I walked out of that memorial service. I know this sounds depressing, but like, I feel like every time I go to a funeral, it's like, it wakes me up.
Yeah.
Like
it is. It's a thin space, right? Where you just, this awareness of what matters in life. What are we doing? And I look, because sometimes I'll officiate a funeral and I'll look out on the front row and I'll just see those people and I just begin to think like, who are the people in my front row? Like, am I living my life in such a way where I'm investing, because I can live my life for people in the back row or people that might not even be there, for their approval.
Yeah.
And it's just like, like how do I live in such a way for the glory of God and make the greatest investment of my life in the people who will be in those front rows?
It's interesting you say that, because not to get off track here and have this be about funerals, but you delivered the gospel at Don Hasselbeck's funeral, and we're good friends with the Hasselbeck family, and Don was a former NFL legend. His sons went on to play in the NFL as well, and they live here in Nashville. But I attended that memorial service. I knew Don. We had just had a few conversations together, but then we were there just really to support Tim and Elizabeth, and we're sitting in the audience, and you stood up and you preached and you shared the gospel, and it was so powerful. But what's interesting is I remember there was another funeral moment that has always stuck with me in terms of perspective. And I was asked to sing at a funeral. You get asked to speak at a lot of funerals. I'll get asked to sing at them. And this particular funeral, they evidently had no time constraints on it. And it was one of those where they opened up the floor for anybody. But they didn't tell me that. And I was up there playing guitar and singing like some Chris Tomlin song. Yeah. But then they just had me stand up, and I probably, my fingers were bleeding. I was up there for probably 3 hours as people took turns paying tributes to their friend. And then I was trying not to be selfish, right? I was trying to like be in the moment, but I'm like, man, I'm sweating.
Don't you have a pedal that you can like push that just keeps that?
Yeah, where's my loop pedal? I need to go get a drink of water. But finally, the train of people had come to an end. And the last person to stand up happened to be this gentleman's best friend in life. And he summed it up. He said, you know what I find to be the most fitting tribute of our friend today is that of everybody who spoke about him and every story that was told, there were no conflicting reports.
Wow. And
I thought, like, and that has never left me. It's like at my memorial service, may there be no conflicting reports. Yes. Like I can't help but think about the Chilean who gets stuck in, remember that story where he gets stuck in the mine, and when they lifted him out, and he was so excited that he had to thank his girlfriend and his wife, and I think they were both there.
They're both there.
So, imagine coming back up to the surface, like, that's conflicting reports. But that always stuck with me. I'm like, man, may there be no conflicting reports. Isn't that
front
powerful?
stage and your backstage the same. Like, no conflicting reports.
And for somebody who is in ministry, those are the things that we want to be said of us. I know you had this heartbeat of like, and what has anything made you pray more than being a parent?
That's it.
Right.
I mean, that really is. That was the beginning and origin of my prayer life.
Having kids?
Yes, having kids. I think, I would watch my wife, Ree. She had such a consistent devotional life, prayer life, and really woman of prayer. I had time that was more, sporadic, and I was a pastor. I mean, I would spend time in prayer, but it would easily creep into sermon preparation and working on ministry things.
Yeah.
And so there wasn't a separate prayer life. And I remember I really struggled with it when Durham was born. Actually, I think Ree was pregnant with Durham, and there was one of the convictions that God gave us while Ree was pregnant to fast and pray for each one of our kids. And so it was like, that's one way I can kind of carry them in my heart in prayer and to pray for them. And while I was praying for Durham, Ree was pregnant with Durham, the prayer was, I felt like the Lord gave me a question, and the question was, do you want Durham to inherit your prayer life? And so I was like,
like, is it a prayer life that you would be proud for him to adapt?
And I was like, And so really from that point, it became, I thought, well, there's probably a lot of things that I want Durham to inherit one day, but I don't know that my prayer life would be one of them. And it was just like the invitation. Well, it wasn't like it was like, the Holy Spirit, let's build a prayer life that you can give to him. And so it began on a journey. And so I reached out to Dan Ryland, who was the executive pastor at 12 Stone. And I told him, I said, Dan, I'm really struggling with consistency in a prayer. There'll be a few days, and then I'm struggling with consistency. He said, Kevin, pick a time, pick a place, and have a plan. He said, pick a time, put it on the calendar, pick a place that you go to every day, and have a plan. And I had never had anyone just break it down that simple for me. It's what I needed. The desire was there. The hunger was there. I just needed the clarity that he gave me that day. And it was like that conversation coupled with, I want to build a prayer life that I can hand off to my kids.
Ooh, yeah.
Those two things coming together just really ignited a prayer life that I can look back and I can say every day, just the consistency, but not just the consistency of also just the intimacy and the communion and the oneness. Like right now to this point, I wouldn't trade it. Like I wouldn't trade it for anything in the world. It is that history with God is what's most precious to me. And so I'm just so grateful for that wisdom that's shared. Again, somebody who's a little further down the road shared some of their wisdom that they've gained.
Yeah.
And has made such a big
difference. And you reached out for that wisdom too. Like you push against the loneliness of like, I'll just figure this out. Yeah. But you thought of somebody who might be able to, and you were humble enough to go ask. I think that's a great point for people to take in this moment too, of just going like, hey, there's no shame in reaching out and going like, I think I need some assistance in this area. And who do I think might have that? And then to find out that they're all too happy to, they're not going to, that pastor, because you could reach out to another pastor and be afraid, I don't want to admit that I'm like pretty sloppy right now in my prayer discipline. Right. But you humbled yourself to acknowledge that. And then through that got incredible wisdom. Pick a time. Pick a place
and have a plan.
And you've shared that from, in church before, and I've written that down before as well, because I've needed it. I think it's interesting too, that you humbly acknowledge that your wife, Ree, was setting the standard. Yeah. And that has happened in our own home where my wife, Emily, has set that standard. And I've watched that, and I've had similar internal convictions. I think an interesting common theme of our conversation already is the voice of the Holy Spirit, and how I think sometimes conviction gets a bad rap. Because we don't like we think of conviction equaling guilt,
Right.
but conviction, there's so much grace and mercy in that because it's correction.
That's right.
And has a chance to lead us in a new direction. And that's ultimately God in his grace, allowing our hearts to be impacted by, hey, there's a better way.
Yes.
There's a deeper level. There's living water you're missing.
That's right.
Don't miss it.
That's right.
So I love that theme, and I need to be reminded of that. That's powerful.
I mean, the kindest thing you could tell me right now is that I have spinach in my teeth.
Right.
I mean, if we're sitting here, like, that's what I want to know, because I think it's on video. Like, I want to know that. And then once if you tell me, well, then now I have an opportunity to do something about it. And I think it's the kindness of God that leads us to repentance. It's not our repentance, right, that leads to his kindness. It's God's kindness. Let me show you what you can't see. Mm-hmm. And so, yes, I think that conviction really has been a gift.
Guys, Christmas is right around the corner, and we are having an incredibly special event in Franklin, Tennessee this Christmas, December 4th through the 7th of 2026. It's called Come Home for Christmas. It's our annual weekend where we hang out with a very small select group of people that come and hang out with us for the weekend and get in the Christmas spirit. This weekend is filled with awesome festivities. We do a Christmas tree lighting downtown Franklin, Tennessee. We sing carols. We drink hot cocoa. We have a special Christmas dinner, special concerts and events all throughout the weekend. We get to hang out and do life with you and get in the Christmas spirit together. If that sounds like fun, then I want to encourage you to go to MatthewWest.com. We have very few passes left, but we would love to ring in the Christmas season with you. Come home for Christmas, Franklin, Tennessee. Join me and the West family and some incredible special guests. It's going to be amazing. I'll see you in Franklin, Tennessee. Go to MatthewWest.com to get your tickets now. So the other thing I noticed that, again, selfishly, what speaks to me, because obviously we're talking to everybody who's listening to this podcast, but like, I knew having you in today that I'd get so much out of it personally. So there was some agenda. But speaking of agenda, like, that concept of like spending time with the Lord with no agenda.
Yeah.
And how to, for me, the equal would be like, am I reading my Bible because I need a song idea? Yeah. Or, you know what I mean? But like those moments of just going like, the only agenda is to be with you. Yes. And like, it sounds like that realization of the handing it down to your child is what brought you to that place.
It really did. It started, and so the consistency began, and then what happens is, I believe once the consistency happens, once you begin to set the discipline, and that your spiritual life is not adjusted by your feelings, but whether you get up or whether I feel like, no, I'm just going to put it on the calendar, and it's a meeting with God. Bolton, we'll come back to that, but Bolton plays golf, and he loves golf. So he's been playing a lot of golf, and he had this guy who goes to the Franklin campus, who is getting ready to go on tour, on one of the tours on golf. Reached out to him and said, "Hey,
like a pro golfer, legit."
Yeah. And it's actually a tour in Egypt, so he's getting ready to go over there. So preparing for that, and he reached out. Bolton was asking him some questions. He said, "Hey, I train at one of those virtual golf places, with the screen,
and like indoor simulation."
Indoor simulation. He said, I train at 4:30 from 4:30 to 7:30 on Tuesdays and Thursdays. You can come train with me if you want." Wow. And so I invited Bolton. You know where Bolton was at 4? It was the first time. I don't even think that he knew that 4:00 happened 2 times a day, right? And so here he is, Bolton, a 16-year-old. He's getting up. He's getting ready for school.
Oh, 4:30 a.m.
4:30 a.m.
Hey.
So he goes before school and trains with this guy, and I was like, because he had a sense of desperation. Like, I want to get better at this. He also thought, hey, this guy can help me. And so he demonstrated the discipline to get what he wanted, Wow. And so when we look at like intimacy with God, I believe that through the cross, that we are as close to God as we want to be. So I know it's not a matter of access; it's a matter of desire. And I think one of the best things we can do is just be honest with where our desire level is, right? It's just go like, man, I'm not wanting it right now.
Yeah.
God, I'm not wanting you like I want to want you. Would you help me want you? Because even the desire to want Like even wanting is a grace.
Yeah.
You know, so like we can ask God, would you stir up hunger in my heart? And then we create space and time for that hunger. And so then what happens is that time begins to grow. And I think a lot of people are like, well, what do I do with the time? You know, what do I do if let's say I set 15 minutes, 20 minutes, 30 minutes, and out, however long you set on the clock. I don't want to get legalistic about like how long it should be. But I do think what we do in that time, sometimes we can come with all of our agenda. You know, we come with our podcasts and with our with our books and with our journals and with our Bibles. And so I would encourage like, hey, let's remove kind of all those things and just say you're keeping company with God. And so if it's your first time, maybe first time in a long time, I would just encourage coming with a plan. So for me, one of the things that's worked is to have a Bible reading plan. And so to just know this is what I'm going to read. And so I do one of the plans, it's a YouVersion plan that just takes through, and there are a lot of them that take through the Bible in a year. Yeah. And so it just gives you a little bit of the Old Testament, a little New Testament, a little Proverbs, a little Psalms. I consider that conversation. So that's the conversation. So we know that God speaks through his word.
Right.
And so enter into that time. I'll usually start, and just I hope I'm not sharing too much, but maybe this might be helpful for somebody.
This is amazing. Yeah.
I'll start with just acknowledging who God is and some attributes. God's glory is the sum of his attributes. And so we begin to acknowledge his attributes, who he is, and just sit in that moment and just remember who I'm talking to. Before I rush it talk, I just take a moment, let my heart catch up with the truth
Step one.
of who's on the other side of this conversation.
That's good, yeah.
And then second is then move to a place of gratitude. And what I find, no matter any point in life, I think it's Rick Warren who said, life is like it's like a
box of chocolates. No,
that was a different Rick Warren. No, it's like, he was a screenwriter for Forrest Gump. But he talks about how it's like a railroad tracks, that there's always something to be grateful for and always something hard that you're going through. And I can go straight to the hard things in prayer. And so it's like it's setting that moment and just going through. What are 10? I'm a football guy. 1st and 10. What are 10 things that I'm grateful for? And I just list those out. And that's a discipline, whether I feel like it or not. You know, sometimes I don't feel like gratitude. Honestly, sometimes I'll do 5. Sometimes I'll do 3. Yeah. But I always do something. Yeah. And then get to a point where I'll just sit for a minute. And in the garden, God asked the question, Aika. That was the question that he asked Adam and Eve. And that question, Aika. And that question is, where are you? You know? And so he's just asking, and he's not talking about their bodies. Like he knew, he had Life 360. He knew where they were. Find my friends. He knew where they were. He's talking about their hearts. And so I'll just ask my heart, Aika, like, where are you? Man, I'm tired. I'm lonely. I'm afraid. And so this gives me a moment, like we talk about feelings, and rather than our feelings keeping us from God, now in this space, we're now in a meeting, with God, and the question is, Aika, where's your heart? And so then we get to feel the feelings. So we don't push those feelings down. We get to feel those feelings with the one who already knows, right? And who cares. And so then we get to express those feelings to God. And what's wild, I'm going to tell you, this is one of the miracles for me that happens almost daily. What God will surface in my heart with that question will I'll say 9 times out of 10, line up with something that I read that's already in the Bible plan.
Interesting.
So like surfacing in the heart, like, okay, what do we need to talk about? What are you feeling? What's going on? What's top of surface? What's in your last 10%? Doing that with God, just taking 3-4 minutes, just Aika, where are you? Then reading through the scripture and making scripture conversational. So then read something, like reading through a psalm, praise the Lord. God, praise you. You're worthy to be praised. So just letting that psalm be part of the conversation. And then just go through Old Testament, New Testament, Psalms, and Proverbs. And that's generally, that can take a long time or short, just depending on how much time you have. But what's powerful about it is the way it stacks up is over time. And it's just like working out, just like anything else.
I was going to say that's like another football type of, I heard a quarterback just saying like we're just stacking days on days.
Yes, the compound interest, right? Yeah, over time. Yeah. Man. So I think, and the one thing that you and I can invest in young leaders, maybe there's somebody that's that's listening right now, a young songwriter or somebody that's a young pastor, and we can pour wisdom into them. We can even pray for spiritual gifts for them. But the one thing that we can't give them is a history with God.
Right.
They have to go get that
to build
themselves. Just
Yeah.
like you've built that.
Yeah.
And by God's grace, like we've been able to build that. And it really is by his grace, but it becomes the most valuable thing, And so now without that time, I'll just be honest, like I would feel like Samson with a haircut.
Right.
I would feel like that's really where my power, and it's not the legalism. I realize that my power comes from a relationship with God. I just need, and it's through having that time. It's almost like I look over here and there's a beautiful guitar that's sitting over there. And I mean, if you were going to play that guitar in front of a lot of people, you're going to tune that guitar before you play it.
100%. Yeah.
You're not going to tune it afterwards.
Yeah.
And so that time with the Lord really is, how do I attune my heart to heaven? How do I attune my heart to the Father, Son, Holy Spirit? How do I get this in tune so that throughout the day when it plays,
you're ready?
I'm ready, and and already hopefully aligning my heart with Him. And and the other part about it, Matthew, is that you've got a home to come back to.
Mm-hmm.
You've already established the home in your heart. Jesus said, "If you abide in me and I in you, bear much fruit." Well, that abiding, we're going to stray. We're going to have thoughts. We're going to be, go down a negative trail. We're going to say things we regret. We're going to do something stupid. But it's that quick return, like back to that place of abiding and making ourselves at home.
And there's back to the guitar analogy, like there's no worse feeling than when you're up there and you strum that first chord and you've seen the Instagram fails, the worship fails where they start singing that Chris Tomlin song and they go into the key and, but it's, and likewise, there are a few heavier feelings than when I've been backstage about to go on and I'm like, Lord, I haven't taken care of first things first. Like I feel like I'm going to be trying to pour out from an empty well. You know what I mean? You talk, and then you see God's grace in those moments. That's again, right. Because even in those moments of conviction remind me who my heart belongs to. Yes. And then I see like his strength is perfect in my weakness. Like, so what I'm hearing you say, first of all, is there's no shame in the prayer, Lord, help me want to read my Bible today. Lord, help me increase my desire to spend time with you, first of all, right?
That's right.
And then when we forget to do that, the idea, when it hits us, it's like the enemy wants the shame or the guilt for how we've fallen short to push us even further away from that pick a time, pick a place, have a plan.
Yeah.
But it's all about like, start stacking days again.
Yes.
And get back in.
It's his grace.
How do you, one of the things that I like now more than ever, and it's crazy because like years ago I wrote a song called Stop the World, and it was like, stop the world, I want to get off. Like I just need to spend time with you. And I didn't realize how common that theme has been in my life, because like lately I have noticed in me just this seeming like inability, like this constant need for constant noise. And like and it's affected my prayer life, like just even in recent, and it just becomes like a go-to, right? Like it's, if I'm going to go walk the dogs, AirPods are in, catching up on this podcast or whatever. And like, I've had to force myself, I've had to catch myself and go, no phone, no AirPods. I'm going to walk and I'm going to talk to the Lord. But like the noise seems incessant and nonstop if we'll let it. And even like when football season comes now, I'm like, when that opening weekend, it was like, there's a Thursday night game. Guess what? There's a Friday night game in Brazil. Right. Guess what? Guess what's coming Saturday? Game day. And then a whole slate of games. Did you know, like YouTube TV, like you can see, my buddy and I were sending each other pictures of like our screenshots. And it's like, we had like 4 games going on one screen and 2 on another. And I'm like, this is a problem. Right. Like, as we head into the fall, it becomes even harder and harder. But like, this craving of noise, like what am I so afraid of? Like, why does the quiet scare me so much? And I remember years ago I read a book by Nowen that talked about silence and solitude being the furnace of transformation.
Yes.
And it talked about, it explained why we're so scared of it.
Yeah.
And why, because in that silence, in that solitude, we're faced with the reality of who we are.
That's right.
And the reality of who he is. But if we can, it encourage us to fight through that discomfort too.
Yeah.
But I always, when I sense that in me, I'm like, okay, something's up here. It's almost like it's a gauge to let me know, like, what am I running from?
What am I running from? Yes.
Right? Is that what it is? Am I running from something by trying to fill the space with noise all the time?
Yeah. I think it's a great question. I think when it's solitude, it's when we choose it, right? Like, and so we're choosing to distance ourselves. I think there was some quote like all of the brokenness of humanity comes from the inability of man to be alone in a room. Like it talks so much, and like even being alone in a room, like we're quick to pick up our phone, like just because we don't, right? We don't
fill the space.
Fill the space. And so, I do think your awareness of like, man, I'm constant, and there's no shortage of content. I'll tell you something for me is there's this fear that there's something that I need to know that I don't know. Like there's something that I mean, especially with current events and with new, pastor and Sunday's always coming. There's kind of this thought of like, what is going on in the world and so it really is to be quiet and to sit in silence is actually an act of trust. Like it's trust that be still for I am God. And so being still is an acknowledgement that he is God and I am not. Right. And so I have to like come to that, like, I'm not God. I don't have to know everything that's going on in the world. I don't have to know all the current events.
Is there a more countercultural activity than stillness? Actually?
Right. And then there's that verse in Isaiah. It says, in repentance and rest is your strength.
Yeah.
Right. In silence and solitude and repentance and rest and your strength. But then he goes on to say, but you would have none of it. Like, repentance and rest is your salvation, and quietness and trust. Quietness and trust is your strength. So that's what it is. It took me a minute to pull it up. But quietness and trust is your strength, but you would have none of it. I'm like, God's saying, I would save you in the silence. Like I would save you from you. I would save you from the madness. I would save you from the noise. But it's like, so it's a surrender every single day. And it's realizing that like, man, we don't have to say, like, we can limit our content. I think it's interesting that, is content and content like supposed to say, like even that we would just be like content without all the,
there's your next series, man. That'll preach. Because it's funny, because as we're talking, like two of my team members, and they're like in charge of content, and it is a never-ending stream of like, what's our content plan? Man, that is.
but contentment, going, okay, I've had enough for right now. In the buffet of content, and to just go, okay, I've had enough. God, what do you want to say? And I think that's sometimes why God speaks in dreams, because it's the only time he can get a word in. So
does he speak to you in dreams sometimes? I
mean, there have been times he's spoken to me through other people having dreams. I don't dream a whole lot. I only dream in when I'm on summer break.
Oh, I thought you were gonna say after you had pizza or something.
Yeah. When I'm on summer break.
When you're on summer break.
Mm-hmm.
Why do you think that is?
I don't know.
You're fully at rest.
I'm either fasting or a summer break. Those are the two times that I think I probably carry a lot of stress, pressure, thoughts, thinking about a lot of different things. Or maybe I don't sleep enough. I don't know. But that's not why we're here.
We interrupt the podcast for a very important public service announcement that starts like this. Ahoy, mateys. Okay, that was stupid. But hey, I'm excited to tell you that pretty soon, this podcast will be at sea. That's right. I'm going to Alaska, and I'm inviting you to come with me. It's going to be an incredible time. July 12th through the 19th, 2026. We're going to Alaska together, and cabins have sold incredibly fast. There are only a limited number left, but I want to encourage you to go ahead and check out MatthewWest.com. Again, the cruise is already 50% sold out. It's called Storyhouse at Sea, an Alaskan cruise. Join Matthew West, me, and my entire family, and some special guests. You don't want to miss it. If you've always wanted to go to Alaska and never had the chance, if you've always wanted to go on a cruise and never had the chance, this is your chance to plan ahead. July 12th through the 19th, 2026. Cabins and tickets are available now at MatthewWest.com. Well, I'm going to ask you one last question about your series that you've been doing on Mark, because I think it, in a way, it ties into what we've been talking about here. But I have to say too, it's like I got this ring, that like tells me my heart rate, and it like gives me my sleep score stuff. Do you have anything that tells you what your sleep score is or anything? Okay, so I got it, and I think I'm going to throw it away. But
is it depressing?
Well, what's interesting is you're tempted to go like. So as your score goes, it almost like immediately goes, oh, I better watch out today, or this. It warns you, right? Okay. And it gives me my readiness score.
Yeah.
Okay, so this morning, I got up and I looked at my sleep score, and it was like really good. Mm-hmm. And my readiness score, it was like, go get him today. You're going to, like, it was like a 90. And I don't think I've ever had a readiness score that was like, up to 90, and I was like, I'm so ready. But the interesting thing was like, this only can detect so much from a physical standpoint,
right?
But it just like the Lord even used my readiness score to draw me back to Him to go, wait, you're not ready yet, because I started jumping right, like, okay, I'm going to get a workout in before podcast. I'm going to do all these, and I'm like I'm not ready yet. Like, I got to pick a time. Pick a place, have a plan. Like, I got to be ready on that level, because that's the level that matters the most. So I was like, even my little ring giving me my readiness score. Like, I love how the Lord is always, He can get our attention through anything if we're paying attention. I just want to have a heart posture that's like, Lord, get my attention by any means, which is a dangerous prayer. Yeah. Because a lot of times in my life where He's gotten my attention the most, it's because I had to be like Saul get knocked off a donkey. Yeah. Like forced to be still.
That's right.
You know what I mean? Look, so Lord, let it be by gentler means as I grow on in life. But anyways, I was thinking about my readiness score and going like, okay, what's the real key to readiness? And you've laid that out.
I think that's a pretty good indicator of spirituality, is that can He speak to us in life? Like, are we seeing the metaphors? Are we seeing the pictures? I mean, Jesus is all the time speaking in parables. I think He still does. Like, so are we seeing those things? And maybe if we're not, like, we're moving too fast, because hurry has no eyes for like the miracles, just like all the noise can drown out the voice of God. I know when I'm moving too fast, I don't see the birds. You know, and like Jesus said, consider the birds. Well, I don't consider the birds because I am.
I got a daughter who never misses a sunset. And there's something so beautiful about that. Like, she literally will drive to the hillside to see and she'll always notice it and always point it out. And she's helped me notice it. Yeah. And it's so like, and I feel like in a way you're helping us make time and space to notice the sunset, to go like, hey, pick a time. Pick a place, have a plan. Yeah. I love what you laid out. Before we go, you've done an awesome series at Crosspoint on the book of Mark, which I've found to be really helpful too, of just like diving into a more intensive study book by book. And this past Sunday, you talked about the second storm that the disciples were in, and Jesus was not in the boat with them. Yeah. And I just wondered if you could leave us with, I don't want you to, you just preached your whole sermon, so I'm not going to ask you to do the whole thing. But when we're talking about, you talked about the storms and how God uses them. Like, He's always talking, He's always speaking to us, and those storms help us see His glory. And the disciples were hurrying through the miracle of Jesus feeding the 5,000. Yeah. And Jesus got their attention in a different way this time. Yeah. But I just wondered if you could close us out by just kind of, let's talk about the storm. Yeah. You said something the other day that was depressing and encouraging. You said you're either going into a storm, right in the middle of one, or just coming out of one. Yeah. Not in that order, but but that's the reality. And so somebody listening to this today is in one of three places. They're in the middle of the storm, they just come out of one, or one's coming. Yeah. And you just shared such great wisdom on Sunday about how Jesus meets us in the storm and shows us His glory through it. Yeah. I really, I think about when Mark's writing that gospel, we have that gospel account, like, it's so that we can see who Jesus was and see who He is when He walks the earth, so that we'll know how He is when He's not with us. So that's why we have this gospel account. So we know the heart. Jesus said, if you've seen me, you've seen the Father.
And so he sends these disciples, everybody's going crazy that they've just fed 5,000 people. And this moment of hype, success. Jesus goes on a prayer retreat, which is interesting. We're talking about prayer, is that sometimes the time we need prayer the most is after this amazing, like after the success.
Right.
So that we don't fall in love with our own press releases,
Yeah.
And so Jesus pulls away solitude, intentional, and he's praying, and he sends the disciples in a boat, and that's going to be their classroom. That's going to be the place where I have a buddy of mine that called me the other day. He said, Kevin, he said, I'm realizing that God's test happens in classrooms and not campsites. What he was saying is that I don't have to camp out in those places. And I realize that when I go through a test, it's time to leave. I don't live in a classroom, So it's like, but the disciples found themselves for a night in a classroom, and where they were tested by this storm, and Jesus was interceding for them. And when we talk about prayer, we can have a prayer life, but the most impressive prayer life is Jesus, that he's praying for us. And so Jesus is interceding for them, and they're stuck there for several hours, 6 to 8 hours, and then 6 to 8 hours. And then Jesus comes down off the mountain, and he comes to them in the storm in the middle of the night, and he sees them, and he goes to them, and he walks on water. Now, the miracle, the fact that Jesus saw them
from that far away,
he's 3 miles away.
Yeah, you highlighted three miracles in the one story, right?
So he sees them in the middle of the night, and then he comes to them, walks on water. There's the miracle. And then he goes to him, and he tells them who he is. He says, "Take courage, it is I. Don't be afraid." And that word, it is that phrase, "it is I," is the I am. So Jesus is telling them that he is God. He's the one they've been looking for. So Jesus comes to us in whatever storm you're going through. Somebody's listening to this, going through a storm. You need to know that Jesus is praying for you. He doesn't stop praying. We have to remind ourselves, don't stop praying.
That's right.
But Jesus needs he lives to intercede.
He needs no reminder.
So he is praying for us. He is interceding for you. In that storm, he speaks to you, and he still says the same thing. Take courage. He literally puts courage in your heart. He tells us who he is, reminds us who he is. And then he says, don't be afraid. And if somebody else tells us, don't worry about it, don't be afraid, it doesn't help. If you ever been worried and has somebody but when it's Jesus, he just wants to know, will you take me into it? And what's wild is he says that before the waves quit, before the wind stops, before the storm dies down. So he wants to know, by faith, will you hold on to my word by faith? And then he gets in the boat with them. And then what's wild is the next miracle is they end up at Gennesaret. They end up at a place different than he said we're going to Bethsaida. They end up in another place. And that's just a reminder that sometimes God will use storms, not just to reveal his glory, but who he is, but to get us where he wants us to be.
To redirect.
We can end up somewhere different than where we thought we would be.
It's awesome.
But the miracles, God works and moves there. So thank you for letting me get to
it's awesome. I got so much out of that sermon on Sunday. I was like, before we go, I want to get the the Cliff's Notes version of that sermon all together. Man, I can't thank you enough for coming and sharing your story. To think a guy who threw a scarecrow off of a waterfall, and I've just been blessed by getting to know you and getting to become friends with you, and just so thankful that you'd come and join us today. And for those who are listening and looking for a great church to visit online or in the Nashville area, we're going to post links to the church's website address. It's just incredible, the ministry that's taking place. And I'm going to say one last thing about the church though, but you have this awesome ministry called the Dollar Club. And even if you live in another city and attend another church, tuning in online just to find out more about the charitable works that the church is doing and the way that you're blessing people who are doing incredible things, who need a hand. It's just a powerful thing. So literally just pouring into this Nashville community and being the hands and feet of Jesus. So thanks for the humility and for the wisdom in that humility of what the Lord's doing in your life and giving us some practical tools for how to go deeper in our relationship with the Lord, man. It's awesome.
Well, it's an honor to be here. You keep writing anthems for the church.
Come on.
And I'm grateful for your work.
I'm going to tune that guitar first.
Let's go. Tune it up. Thanks.
That's the show for today. I want to thank my guest, Pastor Kevin Queen, for joining me. Man, I know I got a lot out of that today, and I think you did as well. Hopefully just a great reminder. Pick a time, pick a place, have a plan, and know that there's no better thing, no more important thing that you could do today than to spend time with Jesus. And I love the reminder that he gave that he's praying for us, that he sees us, he knows us, and he cares for us, and he has what we need. So thanks to Kevin Queen for joining me. If you're looking for some more inspiration on Sundays, or maybe you're unable to go to church and looking for a church to go watch online, we're going to post a link to Crosspoint Church so you can check out their services online. Highly recommend it. And hey, I appreciate you guys. Thanks so much. Go make the most of the one shot you get at this life. And remember, it's your story for his glory. See you next week.
From director Sean McNamara comes Soul on Fire, based on a true story.
They said you had no chance, but here you are.
Starring Joel Courtney, John Corbett, Stephanie Shostak, Macy McLean, with Devon Franklin and William H. Macy.
If you focus exactly on loving the life that you're living right now, and not the life that you think you could have had or should have had, that's the whole deal right there.
Soul on Fire, rated PG. Parental guidance suggested. In theaters October 10th. For tickets, go to soulonfiremovie.com.